Today we're going to continue our yoga sequence for traveling. So we did some seated, more upper body focused poses last time. Today we're going to start with a half forward fold. We're going to do a nice wide leg one because if we've been sitting a lot, our hamstrings are probably kind of tight. So we're going to just press the shoulders down the back. We can bend the knees as much as we need to, just to come into a nice half forward fold. We come up. So we're going to think about, if we're traveling, we're sitting, right? Whatever way we do it, if we go by plane, train, car, we're sitting. So what are we doing? So what do we need to do? We think about what position we've been in. We've been sitting. Our hip flexors have been flexed, most likely for an extended period of time. So we're going to work on loosening them up a little bit. We're going to make sure our back foot is nice and straight. We're going to come into a high lunge. So as we bend the front knee, we engage the glute. We try to keep the hips nice and square. And our hip flexor, we remember, is here. Now, if your lower back is sore or you're really tight, I wouldn't extend back into it, because if the hip flexors are tight, often it will increase that lordotic curve. So we can keep one hand down and one hand up if we want to do a little bit easier version or a less tippy version perhaps. We're going to come to the other side. Now, we're going to do some other stuff with our hip flexors, but I wanted to wake them up a little bit first. So as we bend the front knee, if we want to make it a little more intense, we can bring both arms up, pulling the belly button towards the spine, because that will help us to stretch those hip flexors. So if you are feeling really, really tight, you could swap and do this single leg stance little sequence before, but I like that one just because if you're sitting a lot, it helps to open it up a little bit more. So we're going to start a mountain here now and lift our one foot off the floor. So we're putting all of our weight on one side. We're making sure that our hips are nice and stable here, not popping out to one side or the other. We're going to lift up. So we're putting our hip in flexion. We're bringing the toes up, and then we can even go back a little bit into extension if you want, really engaging those glutes. Then we're going to come into a nice low tree, opening up the hip adductors, engaging the abductors, lateral rotators, really engaging those because we're going to stretch them just a little bit in a nice standing way so that we may not need a mat if we're traveling. When I was traveling recently, I did this in my tennis shoes because I felt like it was more stable for me. So that is always an option if you are not traveling with the yoga mat. So shoulders down, we're going to bring leg up, grasp underneath it with our hands and pull up. And then we're going to pull it to the side and up just a little bit. Kind of think knee to opposite shoulder to stretch a little bit of those lateral rotators. So we're going to do the same thing over here. Come into flexion, and you can go into extension. And then we grab, pull, and then we stretch lateral rotators just a little bit. If you were going to lay down, you could also incorporate a hip roll to get the medial rotators and abductors a little bit as well.